way to kick off the discussion about kind of looking at the bigger picture, thinking about a longer-term strategy review for the 9 lots of Riverfront and the 50 lots in the properties that we oversee. And looking at, how we can have some continuity that fits within the plans that are already underway, park space and other public spaces that are already there and operating effectively to make a unified experience that addresses a lot of different audience needs across the community. Our first step, and some questions that came out of that was, what CIP items do we have out there that can consume some time and money, which were sent out, I believe, last week. And then our next step on our discussion is also discussing on what facilitator options might be out there, and looking at prices of that. There's possibly of someone help facilitate, maybe a multi-day or multi-session program that we can develop something that's very visual. So we want to kind of have something that the community can see as other constituents that are in part of this process to help communicate what our vision might be, as well as a narrative. So a big part of anything is helping folks and also giving people an opportunity to contribute their ideas. But I would like to hear what other persons felt on the session, at least as a first step in the process. Do your thing. And I appreciated the discussion of the scope of the Oh, very good point. Yes.
This is actually a really great segue into this next piece. I will let them introduce themselves, but we have 2 guests with us today, Clay Barrett and Zach Peterson. So I'll let them tell you a little bit about themselves, and then they're gonna.
Sure. So, oh, wow, that's
Echo.
okay. I'm back up a little bit. So, my name is Clay Merritt. I am the Director of Engineering Capital Projects for the city. And with me, I'll let you introduce us. Go for it.
Zach Peterson, landscape architect, the city.
So Stephanie asked us to come by and give you an update on Main Street Landing. And we've had some really good productive conversations, Stephanie and I. So what we'd like to do today is give you an overview of where we've been with this particular project, where we are currently at. Some of the finer details are still in the works as we're going through. So a couple of items I'd like to show you some specifics on a few of them, and then I'd actually like to request, if you're okay with it, Zach and I can come back next month when we have some of the more finer details hammered out, and then present those to you as well. So kind of a iteration, if you will, for this particular project.
So Clay, when is the city council going to receive the construction documents to public hearing?
That's a good question. So we are planned, so the city council has a work session, excuse me, not necessarily a work session. It's one of their management update meetings where they have scheduled plan discussions. We are slated to have that in early August. Plans in terms of final plans and specs is probably going to come before them some point in middle to late September.
Because I know that Kyle Crook would like the commission to really review it, understand it,
Mhm.
and be able to send him a letter format to the council, our views of it. And so it may not be that we do that tonight if we're going to get a more detailed view next month, but that at that point in time, that would be the time to put a correspondence for them, and they could get that done at their work session. Does that make sense?
Yes. So I think that would be great. And then that way, so naturally, as with any large project, you have general conceptual ideas, you start design work, you start getting costs, you get a little freaked out at the dollar value, you do some reworking and value engineering of stuff, you get more cost in, you do some more revalue. And so Zach and I want to make sure that what we show you, we have confidence in. And some of the items that our consultant is putting together is reworking the specifics, which we've hammered out with them. I just don't have those at this moment, and I just don't want to show you something that I don't have confidence in. So this time next month, we will have those, and so that's where, if you guys are willing, we'll come back and do a deeper dive and show you a little bit more specifics.
Another question, Clay. Would you say then, after we see and hear your presentation next month, that we, at least individually, if not as a commission, we individually could then share our support, like on our personal Facebook page or something like that? I mean, I think it's important that we really get behind and push this thing to help this thing go through.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to really make sure that, at least on an individual basis and also as a commission, quite frankly, but I think it's important that the more positives that we can send out to the public, that there's a lot of people that are really pushing for this and want to see this happen.
Mm-hmm.
That it's not a pie in the sky. It's something that we really, you have spent a lot of time. I mean, I remember being on the Sky Bridge with you, and we had all the charts and whatever. That's been quite a while ago, but I just really feel strongly that this is a project that Davenport needs to make happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I for one, am trying to support this as much as I possibly can. But I'm thinking, my question then is, so probably maybe after next month, when we see a little bit more definite plans, that might be a good time to say, hey, I think this is a great idea.
Sure, no, that'd be great. So our plan is to both revisit with you next month, to get in front of the Park Advisory Board as well as next month. Because of the location of it, we need to get in front of DRB as well. So that's kind of where we're starting that particular process in July, that middle to late July. I think that'd be great. We'll get in front of the city council. We'll talk for one of the notes in here. I actually have an item in front of them tomorrow approving a contract, and we'll talk a little bit how we've been able to leverage additional funding to do more. And we'll kind of go from there. But yeah, no, I think that would be fantastic. Yep. Yep. So I'll just roll through some stuff. Let's see. Okay. And then Zach's my color commentary. He's our design guy. And something I'll offer to you before jumping back into this, a little off topic before getting on topic. I will also say, in talking with Stephanie, Zach and I will make ourselves available. I'm just going to say in general. So if this commission has questions, they want updates on anything, one of my thoughts too is I don't want to, not knowing what your schedule is, I'm happy to also provide an update on the quiet zone implementation that we're partnering with CPKC on, that I think one of these items is on your agenda now. Happy to give that as well. And then in general, Zach has a wealth of knowledge and history, has been involved in a lot of design work over a decade plus. And so can give some thoughts and presentations as well to you, if that's something that you are all interested in doing. So I'll offer that up, and you guys, if you need us, you just let us know, and we're happy to come here and have conversations.
Yeah, I can see there's a lot of new faces here that on this commission since last time I was here. And one of the things that I did when Steve Aarons was part of this body was come in with, Design 101, just really explain the background of our various parks and master plans and how we got to the point where we are today. So that may be of some value to this body, and I'd be happy to do that.
So shifting on to Main Street Landing, so just a little context and history. As some of you may know, some of you may be new to this, so developing this particular stretch of the riverfront has been something that's always been a goal. For a number of years, the city council had, a $1 million allocation per year set aside, which we know was going to take a long time to build up to a dollar value of worth to actually get a substantial project However, in March of 2021, the federal government came through with the American Rescue Plan Act that basically allocated about $40.9 million in funding to the city of Davenport. There are, I was going to say a couple of rules, but there's a whole lot of rules that come along with it. But in the end, it must be allocated before December of this year, and it must be expended by December of '26. So what the city council did is they took an input of projects from the community and from themselves, and then they allocated that 40+ million. What you see is a sheet that was actually part of their approval. And what you'll see, there's a series of projects. So anything from neighborhood reinvestment to library enhancements to creating places. So think of all of our park improvements that's been happening all over the city, like those were funded through ARPA. What's highlighted is what is referred to as MSL, which is the adventure play. So $6 million was set aside to do, to kind of kick off that initial investment south of the tracks on this particular piece. However, as we've developed over time, we've been fortunate with timing, but also by having decades worth of investment and studies to have projects ready to go, we were able to take advantage of opportunities that became available. And I'll go through a couple of these. So the first of which was the state of Iowa created the Destination Iowa program, specifically creative placemaking, to invest in transformational projects to bolster quality of life. When they saw this, they basically said, communities that are interested, show up with ready-made projects that are well thought out, and you provide a 60% match, we'll provide 40% of the cost. So we actually, in a very short time period, partnered up with the Figge Art Museum and applied for $9.6 million in funding to be leveraged. And that's for Main Street Landing. It's for some lighting enhancements to the Sky Bridge, and obviously it's the Figge's project itself. So to do that, how the math will add up is our initial $6 million of allocation from ARPA funds was paired with $6 million in the CPKC community investment. So prior to Destination Iowa becoming available, obviously Canadian Pacific and Kansas City Southern went through a merger. We took a stance that was different from a lot of communities, and recognizing that historical precedent is the federal government isn't really going to stop rail mergers, and that you are generally better as a community to get your mitigation efforts if you work with them rather than against them. So we took that approach, and were able to get in total $8 million of funding set aside, plus an additional $2 million for a separate project if we were able to get our grant. So in total, $10 million. And that was for items such as pedestrian bridges over the rail, and for the quiet zone implementation. So what we did is we took $6 million from that investment fund and paired it with our $6 million of ARPA funding. That gives us $12 million of quote unquote city funding. Now, this is where the Figge did an amazing job of private fundraising to about $2.4 million. And so together we went in as a group and we're able to leverage $9.6 million. So both our project and the Figge's project totals to $24 million. Of the $24 million, $20 million is the city, $4 million is the Figge. So, and this, the great thing from what we've been singing people to the rafters, and clearly, I would say the city could always do a better job as it communicates its successes. We don't often do a good job of that. Is it's no additional tax burden to the residents. It doesn't come out of our normal budget, so it doesn't come out of our capital programming, which has always been one of the sticking points for our council, whichever council that may be. So that is how we got here from a funding perspective. From a project status perspective, here's kind of a little bit of a colorful Gantt chart. Right now, we're in the process of doing construction documents. So we have gone through schematic design development. In those early stages, as was kind of mentioned earlier, we did a fair amount of community input. We had in-person conversations on the Sky Bridge. We had them at the farmers market. We then had them in schools.
Alternating currents. were,
Alternating currents, we had several booths and places put up. We obviously had electronic forms in order to get people's conversations. And then we paired that with the historic studies that were already previously done. So think of everything that's happened in the last 20 years. We took all those documents in addition with the communication. That created the site plan. And then that then created us, as we move forward into schematic design and design development and all of the weeds that are always fun, that we've been doing for the last year. So I guess moving forward, is there any questions in general before we start talking into actual site program? Okay, so from here, so this is Main Street Landing development as it currently stands. So you can kind of see underneath the sky bridge, we have, our pedestrian bridge starts and then kind of ramps up. So, oh gosh, I'm trying to think, Zach, is it 23 feet over rail or 25?
25 is
25.
a requirement by
Okay.
the CPKC.
Yes, so basically we ramp up all the way to 25 feet over center line of rail. That is a requirement from CP. So if you don't make that, you don't get their permit, and so you don't build your project. So you can kind of see how long that pedestrian bridge is. It's necessary to make sure it's ADA accessible and it meets correct slopes. And then we also reach those heights. From there, it then hits south of the tracks and then dumps off into the park to an overlook. And then we'll kind of go over some of these individual sections as we go.
That starts out and it goes underneath the sky bridge, no?
Correct. And we have some renderings of the bridge to kind of give you a sense of where that, what that will look like.
Another key component of that is it's from a maneuverability standpoint for emergency vehicles. Gators can access that to get across quickly, say if there's a situation where the railroad tracks are blocked.
Yes, that is a fantastic point. So that was always things, so when we were working with the design team, there's part in their AutoCAD, in their design software that's for turning movements, and it's to ensure that we gave them the specs on our police and fires. You see there, I'm gonna call them gators, but they're not all John Deere gators, but you see them out at the BICs, you see them at all of our festivals. We're making sure we can make those turning movements in the event that those at-grade crossings are blocked, that we can get public safety personnel over the tracks with this. So it's not just a feature, but it's also kind of a built-in public safety component as well. So this is just another rendering and imagery of it. We'll kind of go. So one of the three items in particular I'd like to touch base with you all and get your thoughts, get your opinions. So the area that's highlighted in orange, originally during all of our public feedback sessions, I probably say one of the highest things that we were told is people like the idea of ice skating. Ice skating on the river, and how we can make this not just a summer style park, but how we can make it year round. As we move forward, it developed from an ice loop into more of this oval shaped purpose for two reasons. One, we didn't want to create an ice loop that had the inverse effect, that it was only good in the winter and it was somewhat dead space in the spring, summer, and fall months. So what we have is we've gone to this particular thing, which is kind of a multi-court sport court surface. So it's elevated. So this particular item you'll see, I'm actually looking, where's my numbers? Roughly river stage 21 is where this particular section is going to get elevated to. And it's kind of a multi-use space. So in the summer and in the kind of that April to November timeframe, it can be rearranged into pickleball courts. It can be a volleyball courts, tennis ball courts. So the idea is that parks or yourselves or whoever is programming it can shift funding, it's not funding, shift programming over time so that you can kind of generate new excitement. So it's not always pickleball courts. It can be a whole lot of other things. It can be set as a stage. It can, honestly, hearkening back to some previous Riverfront studies, I think there was a beach and one or two of those.
Beach volleyball.
Beach
in,
volleyball.
2014.
Yeah, so you can, parks can truck in some sand, and then for 2 months, I'm making something up here, but for a 2-month stretch, you could use this as a beach thing. So it has a flexible variation to it. However, when winter comes, it's going to have built-in infrastructure that we can, and this is an older rendering. This goes back to not having quite the specifics of what it is, but it's an older rendering that could basically become iced over, and then now we have our winter activity there. Do you recall the square footage?
I was just thinking off the top of my head.
I'm
It's like, it was
thinking,
8,000,
I think
somewhere in there.
8,000 plus square footage for ice.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the question.
Hockey,
You mean like roller hockey?
yeah.
Yeah, well, so it's not necessarily, I mean, it's gonna be oval in shape, so it's not gonna be like conducive to, say, a traditional rink size. It'll be a little, but I mean, I suppose you could
Yeah.
put nets in there and use it for that purpose.
One of the components of what we were looking to do as well is we partnered, actually, this is in front of the city council tomorrow for approval, is we went out and for both RDA and SCRA, and we asked for to kind of upscale. So lighting, there'll be lighting throughout the site, but we thought it would be really interesting to see if we could find some local community partners to kind of help upscale pieces and selected areas of this, and we basically landed on as a design team. It's the sport court area, and so enhanced lighting is essentially these dynamic LED changing lighting features. It's going to be specifically focused on this multi-sport slash ice rink surface, and so then it can project imagery and colors that can move and change on this particular item. And so for this, RDA and SCRA both agreed. They love the idea. And so RDA is contributing $375,000 to the project, and SCRA is $187,500. So a little over $500,000+. The design contract for this particular element is actually in front of the city council for approval tomorrow. Tomorrow, yes.
So from a use perspective, thinking about ways of engaging the space, enhancing it for year-round opportunities, as well as more, with the nice lighting, complementary to the figgy and that kind of thing, creating that nighttime environment where people are welcome and more inclined to hang out at night, and that precipitates it being a safe space and keeps some undesirable element out of the site.
They'll be separate. So we've actually had some, honestly, probably should have some conversations with you and the Figgy. But we're trying to, how do I best say this? Make sure we're not competing against one another.
They need to be complementary.
Complementary, thank you. And so this one, that's where we think it'd be really nice if it's focused in one area, not throughout the whole site. Similar, our Sky Bridge is looking to, we'll have, I can share with you all a little late, next month, excuse me, some of what we have plans for the Sky Bridge. And so we plan to basically light the bridge itself, but if you recall, the south tower on the riverside actually doesn't have any lighting attached to it. We're looking to light that up as well. But once again, we don't want to compete against one another. We just,
So it's more than replacing the old LED.
correct.
Are you going to do that, or are you going to keep color in there too?
Yes. So, and I think right now, we're probably only have 3 to 5 options of color at the Sky Bridge. It's very, very small amount. The technology there is so outdated that we struggle to keep it moving. But yeah, we're going to replace all of that. And then I can't remember the exact number of color palettes and movement and stuff that we're looking for. But that one I think is more static in nature, just for as a lighting element. So because we don't want it to compete against either Main Street Landing or the Figgy. The second element for today is built in this play area. So let me see if this is possible. Oh, it's going to work. No, it's not going to work. So that little highlighted area, what's in blue is actually the active play space. So we have quite a bit of different play features and functions, and that particular area is one I'd like to dive into with you next month, as we're kind of refining some of those elements. But within it is a play tower. So in particular, I would say, I think in total, the height of it is close to 30 feet, if my memory is correct. Pretty tall. But it's a play tower that's multi-storied, I think 3+ stories, where it has different climbing elements. It has slides attached to it. And this is kind of a rendering of what we were working with a unique play structure component with. So the next couple of photos are kind of as you look forward. So these, as you can kind of tell, our thought process and our design team's thought process is a little bit of an homage to the Figgy with its design. What we'll show you next week as part of the other play features is an homage to the roller dams. So that's kind of, in our mind, two of the most dominating visual elements along our riverfront. So we wanted to make sure we took that into effect when designing some of this.
A key component there to note is, so this company that worked with is called Earthscape. They've done similar play towers, iconic across well, they're out of Canada, so actually internationally. But keeping in mind the location of the site, you'll notice the pillars, the structural pillars are metal in nature up to flood stage where the wood takes over. So any inundation will be underneath that point and not affect, it would not affect the wood construction.
So it's wood, what we're looking at is wood, or is it made of something?
It would be wood.
One of the elements overall for this site was ensuring that it is resilient to any floodwaters, so which is topical as of today. So this particular section, Zach and I were just taking a look at the plan set, is roughly around, it varies from basically river stage 20.5 to basically river stage 21. And that's at the floor level of where you're, if you were standing there. Other pieces of the park are both higher and some are both lower as we move forward. But overall, this entire area is going to be in generally like raised up to a pretty good extent.
So where they're standing is that
Where they're standing is at, give or take, 20.5 to 21. I think I have,
about where the bike path is.
yeah, so like 563.5 is the elevation stage. And then in addition to that, which is not shown, let me see if I don't have a good one of this, but I'll have it for next month. Sorry for cycling here. So I'm gonna go back to the site plan. That's kind of hard to see, but raised like in this, because it doesn't show my cursor. So kind of where you can see that brown internal walk path as it goes underneath the bridge and it kind of ramps up. That's actually the height of a berm that sits through there. So one of the ideas is protection from the rail. So if this is where we're having a substantial amount of our kids play, is we want to make sure they're also physically protected. So that berm is going to like basically be raised up, which means it's an elevated walkway that's going to kind of oversee the site in and of itself, but also provide that physical and noise barrier. That berm in and of itself is fairly high as well. I mean, that's up to almost river stage 21.5 to, it varies. I think at the top of the berm is almost stage 24, 25 plus. So it's going to give, the overall nature and visual appearance of this entire site will change as we do that in order to meet the mandate that was given us by council is to ensure that it's flood resilient. So sorry for cycling. So there's some imagery for what currently we have. This is the preliminary imagery that we have from our consultant.
Can I just add, a lot of these have a lot of red in them, I'm curious, have you selected that as a color already, or is that just the image, I mean, is it the working plan, or is that just what they give us?
In answer to that question, obviously the color palette reflects back to design guidelines. It's inspired by the roller dam red and then that kind of color range.
So the red that we're seeing up here is within the colors that you probably use for like the bridge?
Right, I'm not terribly, that rendering isn't quite, that's a problem with the computer renderings. People think it's exact and that kind of thing, but no, I wouldn't say that's the final cut at this point.
And we also have, so any feedback you have, whether you like the idea of the roller dam red or not, or color schemes, you can obviously give that to us. We have I think in 2 weeks, we meet again with this particular consultant to kind of refine this. This is something that we've had since probably the spring, if I remember correctly, so.
And then there are other ways to render it,
Yeah.
like, so Final Cut.
And then part of it too is you can kind of see this bridge to your left that kind of, that's where it comes off part of that berm into the thing itself. So that way we have an ADA component as well. So that's something that we are always thinking of whenever we put these things together is how can we make this accessible? Whether it's this particular feature or other features within the park as well. So that's always a design element for us.
Pour in place. No, pour in place safety surfacing. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a high ticket item, but it's in the best interest to have that entire surface covered. But, yeah,
The,
sure.
if I came with better imagery, I would show you on the backside of this, on the backside of that berm, what we currently have working with Sasaki is kind of a set of almost slides and embankments and everything that kind of mimics the roller dams. It's I'm a little biased. I think it's really great. Zach led the design effort on it, and then I think that's the homage to that. But to his point, we have a lot of elements where you could fall, and so making sure we have that pour and play surface, I think, is key.
I think that it's just safe to that whole area is embankment themed, so it's safe to say slides, interesting handholds getting up, it hopefully have some climbing elements as well.
Speak a little bit to, we talked about flood resilience. Could you explain a bit of the scope of what that means? In regards to, I understand there's elevation, so it's like that takes these elements out of potential water, but like, let's say the ground, the spongy stuff, right? If that got saturated and was underwater, would have to be replaced. Like, do you have some general boundary? I don't know, if this is true, but saying, what does flood resilience mean as you go through this process?
I'd say your highest level of finish are out above where the majority of the flood would be, percentage-wise in that. However, certain areas, wouldn't be, like, most of it would be free and clear, but you have like the Riverwalk area right at the level it is right now. And, the pour in place area strategically to where, cleanup efforts are hosing it down and moving on and that kind of thing, so.
So I would add to that, in general, is where we can elevate. And so let's say that, I think current flood projections for this upcoming one is 18 and a half. The vast majority of all this would be clear. So you wouldn't even have to worry about cleaning anything off because it'd be elevated above hand. If it did get to those elements, we want to ensure that we use materials that can be easily and safely washed off and sanitized, we can do it quickly. So that's one of the things, one of the reasons we picked Sasaki, which is our design team, is they've done a number of development projects and design projects along riverfronts. I'm thinking specifically in Cincinnati, where they have a similar situation where they flood. And so what they have to do is, but they went ahead, which is how we've always been talking about, is that's not an impediment. You just work with it and you figure out materials and you figure out a way to design around it and make it resilient. You can still have these beautiful, nice parks that we have and we can continue to develop. You just have to be smart about it. And so Cincinnati's done that, and our design team did that particular project, which was one of the things that caught our interest with them in the very beginning.
Oh, excellent.
Yep.
I'll just start off, I'm pretty sure the riverboat themed playground at Marquette and Biderbeck is pour in place, and that gets flooded, and as far as I know, it hasn't had to have that surface replaced even when it's been underwater.
That's correct.
Sure, I'm not caring about the details, I'm just.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. I didn't know the thought process behind what resilient meant and what that means from a maintenance and or repair replace perspective, and what that thought process.
The overarching goal is flood comes, water's gonna do what the water's gonna do, it recedes, we can clean up whatever we need to clean up fairly easy, fairly quickly, and allow people back into this particular space as fast as possible.
On the opposite end of this question, firm engineers thought shocked and there's no impact. And
Correct.
give me the storyline on that, so I'll get that question.
We don't have an exhibit showing it, but the floodway remains clear, free and clear in the entire development. Can you go to the site plan?
Yeah.
Has the Corps commented
Yes,
on that?
yes.
That's what we wanted.
We have our clearance. Yeah.
So I wish I could show you, because this,
Yeah, with the-
I'm tempted to get up. Are you gonna get up? Oh, wait. Oh, it's not working. No batteries.
Roughly, and it's a real faint line in this exhibit, but the floodway is roughly a line that goes like this. That's not exactly, this is current number right now, so.
Can,
Perspective, it doesn't encroach upon that, so everything else is up, fill areas.
can Zach, can you show them the overlook on this, the southern overlook? That's, to me, that's, yes. So right there, so where the bridge lands is not at grade. It actually comes to an overlook that then tie-ins to the elevated internal circulation path. And that's because it avoids that dreaded floodway line from the core. So that way we don't have to have that thing where we're having significant amount of fill in that zone that we can't allow, and that we trigger a lot of core requirements. So that structure, I think our preference is we don't have tons of concrete structures here, because that's very expensive and that's not a play element or an aesthetically pleasing element. But that's there to avoid that line. But it does give you the visual views as you stand up there. And we'll get the height levels for you. But when you stand up there, you do get some sweeping views of our riverfront as you stand pretty high up there as well.
So think about the visual experience, you're going up here, crossing the bridge, but this is in line at the center of the dam. So it's just quite a striking backdrop. This area is perched up above with, they're the best trees from the final version, but keeping that in mind that it is important that these view sheds are preserved, you're up on top of this, there's a lot of unique perspectives involved with that.
Does that go back down to the ground there?
So if you're talking about your progression, you're at ground level here, it starts going up over the track, down, you're up in the air here, and then you're back down to grade at this corridor right here. So, yeah, or the other way, it goes back down to grade.
So that rectangle there, the yellow rectangle where that one line is pointing, that's still way up in the air?
Yeah, do you have the item actually, or?
I don't, like, we can find that and bring that next month.
Do you have a picture that'll show, how does that eventually connect to the trail there?
Yep, so we'll bring that on the,
There will be a direct staircase. You can't quite see it in the rendering.
oh, shoot.
There you go. Whoop,
Oh, maybe that is.
yeah.
Oh, so that's so kind of off on the section, so now I'm gonna stand up.
Let me know if you need to drive.
No, you're fine.
All right.
So kind of, as you forward, so this is in particular, as you come through. So this one, you can kind of see
Yeah.
that elevation. I'm gonna say off the top of my head, it's probably taller than me, it's probably 7+ feet in the air. So you still get that good view, and then this is where it backs back down to the east or to the west as you come. So it gives you good visuals of the overarching riverfront, but also you can kind of look down and see everything as well. So it's a way, it's a tricky thing that if you want something on the rail, we have a very narrow riverfront, but to get 25 feet high as the height of the rail and then come back down at a slope that may be accessible, that is why this is so long. We went through 15+ iterations on the bridge just to try to shorten it, condense it, and in some pieces just it's what it is. I mean, that's fine. The interesting thing is, and we'll the next set of slides, but essentially like this right here is kind of an overpass. You'll see it in some images we'll show you, kind of enclosed. That's a railroad requirement, so that necessarily wasn't what we were wanting, but I can understand the point. But you're going to be 25 feet up in the air here, so I think especially as you get closer to nighttime, as you get closer to other elements, you're going to have some really nice views let's not make it just a point A to point B, let's make it a piece of the design element, so, that's what we try to do as we move forward. So that's our last element that we're gonna talk about today is the bridge itself, just to give you some different views, and I'm gonna cycle really quickly, so I apologize. So basically it's, you all see that here. So here's like 4 images of what it would look like. So as it goes underneath the bridge, you can kind of see in the upper right corner, kind of what it looks like. There's the enclosed entry over the rail, and then as we move forward. So, and I think part of I'm trying to remember, I think that what the specific wording was, what it was. Part of our public outreach was the look and feel of the site, like what are the aesthetic themes that you're looking for? And that's kind of where we got some of the bridge stuff. It was, most people went for historic in nature, if I remember correctly, like urban and historic is what their look and feel that they were wanting, so.
So that's where the emergency, like a gator.
Yep.
Be able to go across there,
Yes.
Correct.
but not a true ambulance.
No.
No. At that point, you're looking at a vehicular bridge, and I think we just tripled the budget. So,
Yeah.
Will that walkway be open during a major flood?
I would not think,
Like our flood right now, would that still be open in an 18-foot flood?
It's a policy decision.
yeah, I think that's a policy decision, from,
That'd be really,
It wouldn't be under though.
it'd be really cool if it was. People love looking at flood.
Yeah.
yeah, no, I think at your lower level ones, I think yes, in the smaller ones, because in the end, your entry point is at River Drive at Main.
Okay.
And so you gotta make sure that that is still safe, and that we haven't cordoned off East River Drive or anything, but in general, I would say on your smaller ones, then I would see that to be the case. But you always have to make sure you can get to the bridge, and we wanna make sure everyone is safe during that, so I'm uncertain at this point in time, rather. Yes. The restroom, I don't have the square footage on that particular one, but I'm. Oh,
That would be nice to know.
okay, I will bring that along with some renderings of the, yep. I think some of it was square footage, some of it was also derived by cost. Because I think that restroom facility itself is a pretty high dollar value, if I remember correctly. But I'll bring all that for next month.
Is it potential tornado shelter or not?
No. So.
How can anybody not be excited about that? That's what I'd like to know. How can you not be excited about that? Come on.
Zach and I are a little biased, but we may have 2 years into this, so I don't know if we should answer.
So have, yeah, I guess everyone, when we talk about sustainability, then, do you have an annual overall maintenance cost? The facility and maybe broken down by active area.
So,
Kind of know what we're looking at as an increase.
yep, so Chad Dyson, who's our Parks and Recreation Director, so he has been intimately involved every step of the process as part of this, and so as we have design discussions that we have resiliency in mind, we also have operational things in mind. Honestly, that's one of the reasons why we have made the design decision is to make it more operationally efficient. He's finalizing his proposal. I honestly, I should see it.
Really get that from our consultants.
Mm,
I mean, they didn't review it.
yeah,
No,
the,
it's just chat, it's chat.
well, no, our consultants are helping with that. And so for instance, our consultant has sub-consultants, so the ice area in particular. So, Chad and his operations team has been working specifically with that ice arena. Like, what is it gonna take to maintain this? What it's gonna take to operate this? How is it going to move it forward in the summer months? Like, let's take right now. How many staff does he need to maintain something like this? So those are all things that they're putting together. Our consultant team has been very helpful along that process.
Is that something the council's going to see at the work session?
Yes, that is one of the things that they have asked us for is, if we build it, we maintain it. And then we obviously let them know that that's gonna have to be an increase in Parks and Rec's budget to be able to do something of this nature. Yeah, so that is something that they will review, and that's something that we're finalizing now. Since it's in draft form, I don't want to steal Chad's thing and take it from him, but it's a high priority. I'm sorry? So the parking will be back in, you know what, I should just have a site program slide everywhere. So you can kind of see, the parking lot underneath, directly underneath the Sky Bridge. We're taking half of it for this particular bridge. The other half will remain parking, both from a parking standpoint, but also, that's also a location for future development, you know, as for future park phases. With all of our parks, we're always hoping that people are super excited and they want to do more. So that's an area, the Quinlan Court is an area, and then obviously to the east, I can't remember the particular name.
CBQ lot.
Yeah, the CBQ lot on the east side as well. And then obviously outside of here, on the west side, is a parking lot as well.
Yeah, the
Can you
long,
get into this facility without having to use the walkway?
Correct, yes. So,
There's no train in the way, you can cross the tracks.
so the at-grade crossings that are there today are gonna be there, during that. So, you know, I assume that's where the vast majority of people will access the park.
So in terms of big lease, part of that, on the very east, it isn't gonna change our leasing ability.
Nope. Yeah, we're purposely not,
Now and lease. Right.
yes, we're purposely not touching that parking lot, since it was redone.
I know you're not, but
Yeah.
it's just the anticipation of number of visitors and that, they're gonna come and say, I can't come because these people are, if you feel like you have enough adequate space without those.
I think, yeah, I think in the moment, we think that we have good space, we won't know until we know. But then I think that's part of it. I mean, the grand, Riverfront plan has almost all of these, minus the one on the east side, being redeveloped as park space. So even the parking lot to the west of here, that's just out of shy on the Dillon Fountain is, I believe that's, you know, a sculpture garden. Yep. Always good for future projects. So, as we move forward. So,
there's an
yep.
ability to expand as well. You have the Figgy lot. You also have, what was Beiderbecke to the west there where, the flood project, and there's also room to add spaces, similar to what you have over there between Harrison and Ripley as well, bringing that further in.
And just north of this particular, kind of, once again, I'm pointing into the air. Just north of where the bridge process goes, that's the Redstone parking ramp. So, we always like to encourage people to use our parking ramps.
And that's the long and short of it is, it's a cultural thing not to use parking decks, but here we have a perfect use for that. So.
And there's
it's
plenty of
always-
space.
There's plenty of space.
Yep.
It's available, and if you don't feel the need to use it, then, I mean, it's up to you to find a spot on the street.
So that is essentially what we have, for today. If you have any further questions, we're happy to take them on. And like I said, if you're okay with it, we'd like to come back, next month for a little bit more deeper dive into some of the specifics, for the park.
Please do.
No, thank y'all for having us.
Thanks.
So I'm gonna provide a little bit of an update, and then if anybody has specific questions, I'm gonna shoot those over to Clay. I know he's a little bit more familiar with this than I am. I'm not sure if this is something that had been mentioned to the commission before, at a meeting I hadn't been at. So, Han Ready Mix is located next to Marine Specialties, which is one of our properties. And currently, they essentially have like a ramp to get up onto their property that infringes on Marine Specialties lot. So they are, in a sense, using part of their lot and not, being charged to do so. So there have been some various things in the works along with the Quiet Zone project to kind of help with that. One of those things is putting together essentially an easement agreement for Han that will specify, you know, how far they're allowed to kind of ramp onto the property. That will be an addendum that we'll end up needing to write into marine specialties lease as well. I was hoping we would have some images of that for this meeting, but you haven't received any, correct?
No, we're just.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're just waiting on some pictures and a little bit more concrete information on that. One of the big concerns for marine specialties is currently this ramp is gravel. And so there's a lot of gravel dust because of that. And so it's now getting up to boats, and is causing a bit of a nuisance. So, this is something that Jim and I have been brought into really probably within the last week and a half, 2 weeks. So definitely still a little bit new to us, but, if anybody does have any questions, I can defer to Clay on that. He's much more familiar with it than I am.
This is stormwater regulations. You can't have, dust,
Yeah, I think we're gonna rework the driveway there.
Yes.
As part of the agreement, we need to keep their dust down, I think, spray something on the same material that dust down, so.
Is this an oxymoron or what? It's a concrete company, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't pave,
Well, they have base materials.
they can't pave it.
What's that?
They have base materials.
Right, yeah.
They use rock.
What I'm saying.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, they move it.
Yeah.
That's part of the problem. It's not just the surface of the road, it's they move the materials and it flows. So is this easement gonna have a fee?
But I think part of it is, right now, there is no fee. What we're talking about is just, they're gonna have, there's gonna be some costs to keep that dust down. So we're kind of working with them on that.
So you're not thinking about charging them, you're just thinking about regulating them?
Yes.
Why is it? Why would we not charge?
I mean, it's really a kind of a small space. I mean, we can show you the picture, it's not, large
Is
area.
marine specialty?
Oh, here we go, yeah.
Is dust really their only concern?
See that little triangle, that's kind of what they're looking at. Sharing with them.
So I will say as we're going through the quiet zone implementation, we kind of, Han's gonna get some fun stuff. So once again, I don't have a pointer. I'll get up and show you. So in this particular site, you have to install, gates, so gate arms. So essentially Han uses, and this is actually a good image. So basically they come in and then they use this particular stretch. Well, I think it was one of the, when we talked to them, it's like, congratulations, you got to use this for 30 years, it's going away. Reason number one, a gate's gonna go there, a gate arm, it's gonna be required. Reason number two is you can see the right of way through here, that's CP. So they've been using CP property as part of their access road. CP looks at this because they have to approve these plans along with the FRA, and they're like, oh, that's interesting. So they're gonna lose access to this particular stretch right here, just because of our project. Then the question became, well, then they're coming through here. Well, this piece right here is what Jim was saying, that's city property, that you all lease. And so we met originally, with, and I apologize, I can't remember his name.
Chad.
Yeah, Chad, so this gentleman, and his point was, he didn't mind the traffic, he didn't mind a lot of the stuff, he said there's generally good neighbors, he had a couple of items that he's like, if we would, I'd like for them to address this. And so we've met with, the property manager, the general manager here at Todd, he's agreed, like, yep, no, we'll control these things. And so what we are comfortable with from a project team, we're not gonna dictate to you, right, what, like, in terms of fees or anything like that, but from a project team, we would like to memorialize what is agreed to, so that everyone knows what the rules are as everyone's moving forth. Because I know they said that they had some agreement that he was told by someone he took over for, who took over for something at that one, but there's no written agreement. At this point, you're like, I'm sorry, like, but, so that's whatever is decided, we'd like to memorialize that. We think that's the best part, is part of the lease agreement that they have here. Now, that would have, conditions placed upon Han to make sure that it's not negatively impacting your leasing. So that's essentially where we come in from an engineering perspective, is we want to make sure we get this project done correctly, but if, you know, Jim and Stephanie need our help to kind of work through some of this and how they can control that, that's what we're doing.
So are we, here's my thing, are we gonna give them a permanent easement, or are we gonna give them an easement with a period of time? Or there is another arrangement that we used to use at the city that had nothing to do with what we called a lease, but something that was very similar to that, that we could revoke if they were really bad.
Well, what we're initially thinking about doing is doing a 12-month period. So,
So it'd be an easement per year.
yeah, but that way we could always change it later.
Right, yeah, that's totally
Yeah.
different. But
Yeah.
there's like some kind of business.
It's like a user agreement almost.
Well, but we've used it a lot of, I mean, I know of it, but I don't know the real name of it, and it works better than an land easement, because then you're kind of controlling use, but they also have free and clear use.
So I think part of, in our discussions is,
That would be a turn.
yeah, that we would recommend is there's performance measures that must be put in place so that your tenant is satisfied and that they're holding their end. And I don't think, every time we've gone through some iteration of discussion, it's a period, right? It's not a perpetual. Because at that point, you lose a lot of control. So that was part of ours. I would say conceptually, both of them have been very nice to work with, not combative at all, says he can do what he wants to help, is even talking about reworking his circulation to kind of cut down on some of that material debris that's coming through. That's where it'd be nice to have a shorter time span to see people follow through with what they're saying. But
We would
in
give money. We're just going for a year, and you're doing all these improvements, and, you know, it's bike path, anything that looks better.
Yep.
Pretty good. That's what I think.
It's trying to create problems.